My name is Lance Weiler. I am a storyteller, and today I'm going to talk about a number of different projects that I'm working on. This is Leica. She's a scientist from another planet. Her planet's been decimated by climate, and she has been sent here to collect data on our planet in hopes of saving her own. Leica was inspired by an action that I saw between my son, who's 5, and my mom, who was teaching him how to read with my iPad. And I thought it was really interesting, the interaction between them, because my mom was teaching him how to read, and at the same time, my son was teaching her how to use the device. And I thought, wow, that's a really unique kind of cross-generational learning thing. And so what I decided to do was, Leica is actually a connected toy. She's a connected device, and inside her is a number of different sensors. Because I'm fascinated by the use of data within storytelling and in terms of how we can better understand the world around us. And so effectively, within Leica, she's able to read altitude, air quality, air temperature, geolocation as she journeys, okay? And so what we effectively did was, the project was born out of a hackathon. And effectively, out of it came this project. And I'm constantly interested by this idea of rapid prototyping. You know, what's a 21st century rewrite look like? What's the grammar of storytelling going to be? And effectively, what they did together over the period of 10 days is using their curriculum and using their imaginations, they powered Leica across North America. And so a group of photographers traveled with Leica, and Leica would spit out the different data of where she was and what she was doing. And she journeyed over 2,000 miles to 56 different locations, all powered by their imaginations. So what effectively happened over those 10 days is we sent her over 2,000 miles to 56 different cities, 8 different countries kind of got involved. And effectively, it was without any promotion. So all of a sudden, over 700 student projects came from all over the world. And effectively, what the kids did was, we worked with them to send Leica to the edge of the atmosphere, so that with weather balloons, they worked to send her up over 90,000 feet above Earth. And she had a camera. It took about, I think, an hour and a half for her to reach that height, and then it took us about 3.5 hours to find her. And we found her in a cow pasture in Maryland. So that's images of the kids and us kind of shooting her up into space. And I became really interested in this idea within the experimentation of telling stories like this, that the imagination that the kids had was so dynamic, and the way in which they looked at the world and the way in which they wanted to help this character was incredibly inspiring. And there was this amazing sense of empathy that was created just from something that was effectively a plush toy with a heart on it. And as we kind of go forward with this project, she will continue her journey in November as she travels around the world. And effectively, the end of the project ends with her being shot into space by NASA, and all the artwork and all the stories and all the data that she's collected will go with her. So when the kids look up at the night sky, they'll be reminded of how far their imaginations can carry them. One of the things, I teach a course at Columbia University that is called Building Story Worlds, the Art, Craft, and Business of Storytelling in 21C. And one of the things that we did last fall was kind of an experiment, which was I had talked to a woman who was with an NGO that dealt with kids who were aging out of foster care. Every year, 30,000 kids age out of foster care. Within 12 months, 15,000 of those kids will be on the street. The average cost per child that's on the street conservatively is $40,000 for services. So that's about $600 million for 15,000 kids. And when I heard the stories about what it was like for them to age out, it sounded like science fiction. And I thought it would be really interesting to work with the students, the graduate students, to see if we could design something that was an experience that would be science fiction on the surface, but then when people went through it, they would actually start to realize that everything that they were feeling emotionally was what kids who were aging out of foster care feel every day. And so what we did was I took my graduate students and I brought in a number of different kids who were either aging out or who were close to aging out, and they designed together. And I became really fascinated by this idea of designing with instead of designing for, could social services be designed more effectively if they actually embraced the people who they were serving? And so what we did was we built an experience that made use of play, technology, and storytelling. But it's centered on a real world story that was just so tragic and moving at its core. And this is a picture of Lydia Jorner and her cousin. They couldn't have had any two different paths in life. By the time she was 14, she was addicted to drugs. By the time she was 18, she had been pregnant multiple times and then effectively was found murdered on Christmas Day on the side of the road. And so we built into this experience this idea of My Sky is Falling. We kind of made use of kind of immersive storytelling ideas and participatory culture in a way that people could make their way through this experience. And what we did with the students was we built kind of an immersive world that people could go through within 28 minutes to 30 minutes that was replayable. We teamed up with MIT, some folks who had come out of MIT that had developed a Q sensor technology that when you wear it, it can read your emotions. And we mapped that to the actual experience. So we looked at how people were moving through the experience, when they were actually really engaged within the experience, when they fell out of being engaged with the experience, and we started kind of iterating on that design. So what's wild about what we started for a couple $100 in my Columbia class is that we were invited to run it at a special UN event. We've been invited to run it for Congress. So we're actually going to run this immersive experience for Congress. And then it's being adapted in 4 states as a framework to train potential foster care parents and social workers to better understand the emotional journey of a foster care child. But what's really exciting about it was for somebody like Lydia, who we collaborated with, it was not only, it was kind of almost like a cathartic release or a therapeutic thing for her to be able to go through it, to be able to share it, to be able to be creative around that, but actually abstract it too. So it was kind of driven from her story, this light and dark, what happened to her cousin and what happened to her. But the fact that it's going to be used and become a vehicle for other foster care kids to put their stories over top of it is really powerful. Because one of the core design things was, can we take something that aging out is feared? Can we actually make it that aging out of foster care is something that can be celebrated? This type of work is really exciting because it's very much on the edges of what's possible. And by being on the edges of what's possible, it opens you up to the potential of experimentation and a chance to shape a language for story, a new grammar almost. And so as we go forward, I'm really driven by this idea, can stories be purposeful? Can they find a greater sense of purpose, and can they work in a way to create empathy? Can you create empathy through technology and through experiences that people tend to think don't have emotional connections? So a lot of what we design will run physically like this in the real world, and then will eventually become user experiences for things that we build that are applications or online experiences and so forth and so on. So thank you.